Okay.
Doctor, we can start right now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, doctor.
Yeah. So friends, it has been more than 2 years since we have started and incorporated electrophysiology like full-field ERG, EOG, multifocal ERG, PERG, VEP in our algorithm of diagnosis and monitoring ocular diseases. There has always an inertia regarding its use among the ophthalmologists, which primarily arises due to the inadequate exposure and the idea of considering the instruments, the examination, the terminologies, the reports, and the interpretations a complex process. Hence, we have designed an instruction course like of thing which covers these aspects of electrophysiology of vision. It covers the very basic aspect, avoiding ultra complex scenario. The idea is to ease a fellow ophthalmologist into understanding the indications as well as interpretation of these tests. ECG, EEG, OCT had also had its first day. The digitalization and different upgradation of computer software made the things better, more reliable, and reproducible. It has now become the mainstay diagnostic tool. So defrost your vocabulary of electrophysiology of vision so far and grasp the basic. Now, why do we need electrophysiology? While examining the fundus, we do indirect ophthalmoscopy, N90D, etc., etc. But the electrophysiology tells you, gives you the early diagnostic and a specific diagnosis. And these are being standardized by the ICEF, that is, it expands for International Society for Clinical Physiology of Vision. Why electrophysiological test? It is to localize the problem in the visual pathway. The symptoms, history, family history, etc. has limitations. If there's a night blindness, they may have many other causes apart from RP. If retina may look absolutely normal, it doesn't mean that there is vision. Retinal pigment epithelium is if there's abnormality, but they may not match the visual problems. So who are the candidates for the test for the electrophysiology? Patients with symptoms suggestive of known neurological or ophthalmological diseases, which require confirmation of the diagnosis like retinitis pigmentosa and Best's disease, etc. If there is an unexplained visual loss, it helps. If you are practicing pediatric neuro-ophthalmology, it helps. And when there are opacities in the media like cataract and vitreous hemorrhage, etc., and if you are giving some drugs or medicines to the patient, it monitors the health. Drugs like ethambutol or hydrochloroquine. It also detects the disease in the carrier states of their parents or siblings. It also provides the quantitative assessment of the progression of an eye disease if you're treating them, and assessment of retinal and optic nerve function following trauma. Now, the referrals, when the reference comes to you, it could be probably for inherited retinal degeneration. If it is so, you perform a full-field ERG, multifocal ERG, pattern ERG. We'll come to that later on. We'll be telling about what is FFRG. We'll be telling about what is multifocal ERG, etc. If the patient is having glaucoma, the patient is subjected for pattern ERG, ocular siderosis, full-field ERG, retinal detachment, full-field ERG and VEP, that is visual evoked potential, multiple sclerosis, VEP, inflammatory ocular diseases, full-field ERG and multifocal ERG, retinal ischemic diseases, including the vascular diseases, it could be full-field ERG and multifocal ERG. In cases of endophthalmitis, full-field ERG and VEP. And if there are unexplained visual loss, that is failure to read the chart, and you don't find any abnormality, then we do the whole list of electrophysiology tests, that is visual field, that is full-field ERG and multifocal ERG and pattern ERG and also VEP. In post-traumatic visual impairment, the pattern ERG, multifocal ERG and VEP is very important. If there's visual impairment, otherwise, if the patient is under stress, some mental conditions, the multifocal ERG, pattern ERG and VEP is also done. Now, how the electrophysiology is recorded, how it works. The record of membrane resting potential and the changes that occur after the light stimulation. Then there's a transmembrane movement of ions like sodium and potassium, and it makes the cell hyperpolarized, that is, more negative to the extracellular space than in the dark. ECG and ERG can be comparable, but ECG has, because the heart is beating, it has own stimulus. So you don't need any stimulus from outside. But for ERG, the retina has to be stimulated by the means of light or probably by patterns that you have. What are the tests, electrophysiological tests? Namely, and more importantly, are EOG, that is electrooculogram, the night adapted, that is scotopic ERG, light adapted, that is photopic ERG, pattern ERG, pattern VEP, flash VEP, and multifocal ERG. There are many other tests which are still experimental, like S-cone ERG and multi-channel VEP, and then sweep VEP, etc. They are supposed to be good, but still experimental. Now, EOG, the stimulus comes from the RP resting potential. It tells you the condition of the RPE. If you're doing pattern ERG, it tells you gross macular function. If you're talking about if you're doing scotopic ERG, it tells you gross rod function. In adapted light adapted conditions, photopic ERG, it tells you gross cone function. If you're doing pattern VEP, it tells you about the macular ganglion cells. If you're doing flash VEP, it tells you about the visual cortex and the visual pathway. If we're doing multifocal ERG, it is macular photoreceptor cells and further. Suppose if you're doing more than one test, so how should we start? If you start among all the tests, you have to start with the pattern ERG because you don't require dilatation and it is done in both the eyes. So first of all, you do pattern ERG, then fully dilate the patient, and then the patient is subjected for dark adaptation for 30 minutes, then do a scotopic ERG. After doing a scotopic ERG, you light adapt the patient for 15 minutes, and then you do photopic ERG. In most of the cases, all the ERGs, you will find A wave and B wave very commonly. A wave is a negative component, negative wave. It comes from the photoreceptors. B wave is the positive deflection. It comes from the B for bipolar cells and Muller cells. C waves, they come after the B wave as a positive wave. Oscillatory potentials are wavelets in the ascending limb of the B wave, and they come from the amacrine cells. So you can find that the EOG is coming from the retinal pigment epithelium. Mind you, the light is coming, crossing the ganglion cell layer, bipolar cell, photoreceptors, and reaches the RPE. From RP, the stimulus comes, and then you start getting the wavelights. So at retinal pigment epithelium, EOG works, C wave comes. The ERG wave comes from the photoreceptors, that is rods and cones. ERG-B waves come from the bipolar cells. Then comes the pattern ERG from the ganglion cells, and then it proceeds towards the nerve fiber layers and to the optic nerve. This is the cartoon, same thing in a cartoon manner. The A wave from the hyperpolarization of the photoreceptors, B wave from the bipolar cells, C from the pigment epithelium, D for off bipolar cells, oscillating potential from amacrine cells. Full field electroretinogram. Now I'm talking about very few words about different tests. Now, full field ERG. Full field ERG is a mass electrical response of the retina to photopic stimulation. That is, photoreceptors to the inner plexiform layer. Pattern ERG, this is it's a measurement of the central retina and ganglion cell functions. Stimulation is done by reversing black and white checkerboard. Checkerboard means just like a chessboard. It's alternating, it's reversing, and it could be off and on also. And it differentiates optic nerve and the macular function. It is recorded using DTL electrodes. We'll be telling about what are the electrodes and the different kinds of electrodes. Then in this case, in pattern ERG, you get a wave which is taken as a N50 positive wave from the macular photoreceptors and N95 ganglion cell layer wave. Electrooculogram, it checks the change in the electrical potential between the cornea and the ocular fundus, that is outer retina and retinal pigment epithelium. It is recorded during successive periods of dark and light adaptation. Visual evoked potential, it basically the electrical signal is generated at the visual cortex in response to the visual stimulation. So there are two ways. If you have multi-channel VEP machine, then it can examine up the visual cortex. If you don't have a multi-channel visual cortex, it checks up to the optic chiasma. Multifocal ERG, there is a simultaneous recording of focal retinal responses. It offers direct, objective, and topographic mapping. It measures the central 30 to 40 degree of retinal function. It's a cone-driven response. And 61 or 132, 103 hexagonal photoreceptor density. It checks the area of fovea, parafovea, and near peripheral photopic retina. The ERG is how it is recorded. The ERG is recorded by measuring the potential difference between the electrode, one of which may be in the as a contact lens. So this is the active electrode. So active electrode touches the cornea or nearby conjunctiva. Then there is a reference electrode, which should be near the eye, near the canthus. And there has to be one ground electrode, which is grounded. So this is one of the very important slide of the whole paper. These on the left-hand side, you find the test like full-field ERG. Then is the refractive correction, because in certain tests, you have to correct the full refraction. You have to give the patient spectacles as well. And the visual acuity, in some it is important, some it may not be important, because in cases of flash VP, it is not important. But if you're doing a multifocal ERG, is very important that the visual acuity should be good. In some cases, the pupil is dilated, and in some cases is not dilated. It should not be dilated. If you're doing a full-field ERG, the pupil has to be dilated to check the whole fundus. The test distance, the distance of the patient's eye from the stimulus is in different tests. It is different, 30 centimeters to 100 centimeters to 1 meter. And in certain tests, it is important that the patient fixates properly in the center. Like if the patient is going for a flash VP, the fixation is not important. But you're doing a pattern ERG, it's very, very important. In some cases, you have to do a test in one eye. And in certain cases like pattern ERG or flash ERG, both eyes are done at the same time. So thank you very much. And I'll invite Dr. Bharti to talk about the machine, how it looks like, what the machine is, and what are the electrodes, etc., etc. So over to you, Dr. Bharti. Please take care. I'll stop sharing now.
Sorry to interrupt everyone. Just got a message from organizing committee saying that we have to conclude this session this day by 5:25 p.m. On behalf of the 5:30, we have the inauguration ceremony.
Yeah, 1 hour is fine. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Bharti, please share a slide.
Yes, sharing. Good evening, everyone. So in this, I am thankful to Dr. Kashyap, who has allowed me to present on the topic machines and electrodes. I have no financial interest. So this is the electrodes placing on the skin. To record ERG, what we need? We need electrodes, we need stimulation of eye by light, we need electronic recording device. The clinical protocol is preparation of the patient by following ICF standard, and then we analyze the ERG and report. The electrodes for recording are active electrodes, reference electrodes, and ground electrodes. The skin reference electrodes can be used in kits, but it has less amplitude. Electrode stability is maintained by a good connection, and it not only decreases impedance, but also it is it causes the electrode stability is maintained by a good connection, and it decreases impedance. More impedance means more noise and wrong reading. Electrode is kept clean to avoid infections and also for reusability. Cleanliness also decreases impedance. Recording active electrodes are in the contact with the cornea or nearby bulbar conjunctiva, and they should be used for standard full field recording, FFERG. There are contact lens electrodes, conductive fibers, foils, and conjunctival loop electrodes. Conjunctival loop electrodes are used most frequently. For good recording by active electrodes, ensure use of non-irritating, non-allergenic, ionic, conductive, and relatively non-viscous solution. Ensure good ocular contact to ensure proper electrode impedance. We should define both normal values and variability for our own laboratory. Contact lens electrodes are centrally transparent with an optical opening which works like a lid speculum. It gives the best recording. The recording is stable with highest amplitude. Types of electrode. Skin electrodes are mainly used in children. Corneal ERG electrodes are monopolar jet contact lenses. Burian electrodes are bipolar. DTL electrodes are most commonly used electrodes. Gold foil electrodes. Reference electrodes can be incorporated into the contact lens speculum assembly when you are using bipolar electrodes like Burian electrodes for stable configuration electrically. These electrodes can be placed near each orbital rim or ear lobe or forehead. Ground electrode is a separate skin electrode is attached to an indifferent point and connected to the ground. Typical locations are on the forehead or the ear. Now, what is actual electrical impulse? Active electrode captures action potential changes and impedance, while reference electrode captures impedance only. So, actual electric impulse is A minus R. The ERG jet electrodes are disposable, monopolar contact lens electrodes. You can see the gold foil on polymethyl methacrylate with lead wire. There is ease of insertion. The movement of the lens during recording and absence of lid speculum contribute to variability of the recording, reduced possibility of eye infections. The gold plating on this type of contact lens electrode etches off with time. Burian Allen electrode is bipolar reusable contact lens electrode with built-in lid speculum and lead wire. You can see in the picture. It is customizable to various sizes. It is ideal for testing infants. This is a reference electrode is built into this electrode and the conducting coating of silver granules are present. But this is expensive, very expensive. PMMA shows variable degree of blurring, so it is not suitable for recording pattern ERG where image clarity is vital. This is used for full field ERG and very costly. DTL plus electrode, it has a conductive thread, 50 micron, and it floats on the corneal surface. It has negligible mass, low cost, disposable, convenient to use, and clear image. No interference with pupil or optics. You can see in the picture, it gives very reliable ERG recording, and best part, it is well tolerated by children also. Gold foil electrodes is useful when you can't use a contact lens electrode or when you don't want to anesthetize the cornea. ERG amplitude will be substantially affected by this electrode, but it requires an adapter. The reference and ground electrode, you can see the picture, the cup of the electrode should remain cleaned and it to be filled with jelly for better conductivity while doing the test. The skin part is prepared properly for the reference and the ground electrode. We have no financial interest, but we use this new prep. The cup of electrode is filled with the jelly and attached for better conductivity, the 1020 jelly. We have no financial interest. One side has channel 1 with active reference and ground electrode attachment. Other side, channel 2, has also active reference and ground electrode attachment. Bottom of connectors showing attachment for active reference and ground electrode. Test for one eye, use one channel. Test for 2 eyes, use 2 channels. Now, computer monitor tells us in what stage of investigation we are in. This is a machine at a glance. You can see it, and the computer monitor guides us also. You can see there are 2 types of stimulators, pattern stimulator and flash stimulator. You can see the check is pattern stimulator and the Ganzfeld bowl for the flash stimulation. The mobile chin rest is to be placed in front of the monitor. Chin rest with monitor and fixation point. This is the picture. This is the monitor displaying the random pattern for multifocal ERG. This is the electrode with one eye closed for full pattern ERG. This is the side view to show the electrode. This is the chin rest removed and the Ganzfeld bowl in action for the flash stimulation. This is the picture of baby flash. This is the picture of closer view of baby flash for babies and unconscious patients. This is the Ganzfeld bowl, a closer view. This is the movable chin rest, which is attached in other place when it is not required. This is the different electrodes put in different places in different tests. Recording the ERG. For that, the test procedure is explained to the patient and the pupil is dilated fully. Size of the pupil is recorded. Patient dark adapted in a dark room with an eye patch. The electrodes attached with a dim red light in the room, and we start the test. The electrodes are attached and we follow the guidance which is coming on the computer screen. The safety information of the machine is the printer and external USB hard drive should be connected via Wi-Fi, and if disconnected, it should not be tried to connect while test is going on. The automatic window updates to be deactivated. The dark room should be kept properly dark. Disconnect the power supply if any cleaning or repair. It should not be connected to an extension cord. To use external drive to have regular backup. A password should be used to protect the patient data. The safety informations are further continued. The electrodes should not be attached to damaged skin. Patients should be explained about the procedure. The waste should be disposed in the household waste. Now, the A wave of ERG is a negative wave. It is formed by rods and cone. B wave is the positive wave. It is formed by bipolar and Muller cells. The oscillatory potential on the ascending limb of B wave is formed by amacrine cells, and the descending limb of B wave is formed by ganglion cells. Now, this is the maximal response, and it is recorded as we record implicit time, which is expressed in millisecond, and we record amplitude, which is expressed in microvolt. Thank you. Now I invite Dr. B.P. Kashyap to talk on ERG, full field ERG and multifocal ERG.
Thank you, Dr. Bharti. So I'll talk about so I'll be talking about full field ERG and multifocal ERG. They are two very common and most very frequently done investigation. So the precaution for the full field ERG is you should not dilate the pupil. You should not put any bright light to the patient. You should not do any test that stimulates the eye or that you put the very bright light into the eye. And after that, you dilate the pupil fully for the full field ERG, and please measure the pupillary dilatation if possible. First of all, adapt the patient for 30 minutes, and if you have given any bright light, you have to adapt the patient for approximately an hour or so. The DLT with wire touching the conjunctiva at the lower fornices are better. The reference electrodes at the outer canthus and grand electrodes are put in the forehead. For the scotopic ERG, that is dark adapted ERG, the stimulation is very less, and it is isolated rod system response. If 3 ERG is a part of a rod and part of cone system response. If it is 10 ERG dark adapted, it's a combined response to a stronger flash, and dark 3 oscillatory potential is from the amacrine cells that is coming and in connection with the rod. Then you, after the light adaptation, the flash cone response, that is just one flash and you record the ERG. And then you have one light adapted 30 hertz flicker, that is, it flickers 30 times a second. So why this 30 times is more important? Because all the rods can regenerate within 20, if you stimulate 20 seconds per, 20 times per second, it can regenerate and you will get the rod response. But if you give it 30 hertz, that is 30 times a second, the rods are not able to regenerate and you just get the cone response only. So after 30 minutes of dark adaptation, a very dim light is given, and you can see that there is no A wave and you have got a bigger B wave. The little bit of light, you have a little bit of formation of A wave from the receptors, photoreceptors, and a B wave from the bipolar cells. Then a maximal combined response, that is light on the more brighter side. You have a scotopic and you have the wavelets, that is oscillatory potential also. Then you have a combined response after 30 minutes of light adaptation. So you get a proper A wave and then a proper B wave from the bipolar cells. And these are the recordings if you give a 30 hertz stimulation. So these are the 6 kind of waves that you get with a little bit in the dark. The above 4 are dark adapted and lower 2 are light adapted. The first one is very little light, little more light, little more light, and little more light, and then it's dark light adapt the patient, and you have flash of light, and these are flickering of lights. A wave is a negative wave, originates from the photoreceptors, B from the motor cells and bipolar cells. You have to have a damage of at least 20% for ERG changes. So one very important thing is in the periphery of the retina, you have more of rods and cone cells, and they are attached to only very few bipolar cells. And these bipolar cells, they get attached to very few ganglion cells. But in the center, near the fovea, you don't have any cone. You don't have any rods. So you have just cones. And every cone gets attached to one bipolar cell, and one bipolar cells gets attached to one ganglion cells. So you have a very good response if there is cones are stimulated. So that is why it's very, very important to see the multifocal ERG, where the central thing is, the central retina is the examined, so is the pattern ERG. Now, this is the rod response, then the rods and cones response. There's amacrine response like a wavelet, and the cone response in a single flash. You get this kind of a typical ERG, and then you get a 30 hertz flicker. In cases, this is the normal in both the eyes, and to compare, one side on the left hand side is normal, and the right hand side is diseased one. So you can see that in dark adapted, you don't have a B wave properly. Little more dark, little more light, you have a A wave coming from the rods, but then you don't have a B wave. In dark adapted, in oscillator potential, you don't get any B wave. All the B wave are absent, and in the flicker you see the amplitude and the implicit time both are increased. So this is a typical of ischemic CRVO. So you know that in this case is ischemic CRVO, the patient is not likely to improve the vision. In cone dystrophy also, the same thing happens. You see the B wave is absent, the B wave is absolutely absent, and the B wave is totally absent in cases of cone dystrophy. Negative ERG, when the B wave has shown, but its amplitude is much less. It has not reached even the base level. So this is a negative ERG. Now multifocal ERG is a new objective technique of mapping the retinal function. It is developed by Professor Sitter and Trans. It offers direct, objective, and topographic mapping of the central 30 to 40 degree of retinal function. Multifocal ERG responses are cone-driven responses. The health of fovea, parafovea, and near peripheral photopic conditions, retina conditions are mapped. Now, what is the difference between the full-field ERG and multifocal ERG is the method of stimulation. In full-field ERG, you have the Gensfield stimulator, but in multifocal ERG, you have a pattern stimulation. And the recovery rate is very fast in multifocal. Now, this pattern stimulation is scaled hexagonal array stimulus and stimulate individual retinal areas. The commonly used is 103 hexagonal array, and each hexagon flickers between two binary states, that is black and white, and is controlled by a predetermined pseudo-random binary M sequence by the CRT monitor. It provides high resolution spatial and temporal information from the retina. The frame changes for every 13.3 milliseconds, and CRT device to deliver multifocal stimulus. So these are the stimulus pattern. It's hexagonal, black and white, and keeps on changing randomly. Clinical protocol is, before doing all this, for multifocal, the pupil has to be dilated. The patient's position should be at least 30 centimeters from the screen. The fixation point is very important. If the patient is not fixating in the center, you can pause the machine for some time. Again, ask the patient to look at the center, at the fixation point, because fixation is very, very important. If the patient uses glasses, you have to give the full correction of the glasses, and the patient has to be light adapted. And if the patient has got some disease, it is better to check the diseased eye first. And the impedance of this electrode has to be less than 5 ohms, not 10 ohms, 5 ohms. So waveform grouping according to different retinal eccentricities. It subtends 35 horizontally and 31 vertically, beam distance 53 centimeters, and the responses are obtained from 6 zones. You can see the central one comes from the fovea and is the highest amplitude. The second and third gradually goes down, and most of the pathologies, especially in toxic retinopathies by different drugs, it is in the second circle, that is after approximately at 5 to 10 degree from the center. So it gives a topographic map and looks very nice. You just have a look, and then you can say that he has got some problem in the fovea and near-fovea, like in Stargardt's disease. So you get a map like this. So this is the coming from the photoreceptors, and this of the bipolar cells, and you measure the implicit time and the amplitude. Implicit time is from the base to the implicit time is from the base to the maximum wave, and the amplitude is the lowest point of the trough to the highest point of the B wave. So there is a difference between the multifocal ERG and pattern ERG. Multifocal ERG is cone system function at macula, and pattern ERG is macular and ganglion cells. So it is very important in cases of macular dystrophies. Multifocal ERGs are done for central serous retinopathy, done for drug toxicity and inflammatory conditions. Now I request Dr. Vibhuti to talk about the pattern ERG. I'll share.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kashyap. So I'll be sharing my screen now.
Sorry to interrupt, Doctor.
Is my screen?
We have only 20 minutes remaining.
We'll finish by that time.
Okay, thank you.
So is my screen visible and am I audible?
Yeah.
All right. So my topic for today is pattern ERGs. So In our day-to-day practice, what we have seen there are some retinal disorders which are most likely to be mistaken for an optic nerve disease, like a subtle posterior scleritis, a central serous chorioretinopathy, acute zonal occult outer retinopathy, certain old central retinal artery occlusions, cone dystrophies, occult maculopathies, autoimmune retinopathies, etc. So in these disorders, where there are very subtle clinical signs, we may mistake it to be an optic nerve pathology. And there, if we just do a VEP, we will be having abnormal P100 waves, whether in latency or amplitude. So would it be okay to label it as an optic nerve disease? No. So there was a study by Dr. Graham Holder et al. in 2001, which showed that the difference in the latency of the P100 waves and the amplitude was not statistically significant between a maculopathy and a neuropathy, whereas the P50 amplitude of a pattern ERG was selectively affected in maculopathies versus neuropathies. So this is an example to show a case of posterior scleritis, which was diagnosed as an optic nerve pathology, because the VEP to your to the left bottom side of the screen shows a delay in amplitude as well as latency. But when the patient was put through a pattern ERG, there was defect in the P50 amplitude as well as latency, thereby shifting the locus of pathology diagnosis from an optic nerve to the macula. So this brings us to the topic of pattern ERG. So what does pattern ERG do? The pattern ERG basically assesses the central retinal response to a structured and non-luminance stimulus. So it's a temporally alternating pattern, usually a black and white checkerboard. It is used to distinguish a macular dysfunction from an optic nerve dysfunction, which a VEP is not able to do. In this, the net retinal illumination remains constant, and there only is a redistribution of the pattern of light and dark areas. So it's an isoluminant pattern reversal. There are two waves to it, a P50 positive and an N95 negative wave. The P50 is driven by macular photoreceptors and N95 by retinal ganglion cells. So in a macular dysfunction, P50 would be abnormal, and an optic nerve dysfunction, the N95 will be abnormal, and later on maybe the P50 is also abnormal. So there are two types of ERG. What we use is a transient pattern ERG, which has low temporal frequencies of less than 6 pattern reversals per second, a reliable peak detection, and we can also detect the P50 and N95 waves in the transient pattern ERG. So the patient has to be positioned at 100 centimeters. The patient should be light adapted. The pupil must not be dilated for a good retinal image quality, which is important. Fixation is very important, and excessive blinking must not be there. The patient must be refracted for 100 centimeters viewing distance. The stimulus is usually a black and white reversing checkerboard with the field coverage of 15 degrees, and each check size is 0.8 degrees. So this is the stimulus with the red central cross where the patient fixates. The luminance is actually constant, and there is a high contrast between the black and white checks, at least more than 80 candelas per meter square. The reversal rate is of 4 reversals per second, and the frame rate has to be more than 75 Hertz. You can record it monoocularly or binocularly. If we are recording binocular, electrodes have to be wired in both eyes. If uniocular, either you wire one eye or you patch the other eye. The electrodes must not be doing any optical degradation. It must be well tolerated and should have an impedance of less than 5 kilo ohms. 2 active electrodes, 2 reference electrodes, and 1 ground electrodes are required. This is the socket for the insertion of the wires towards the machine end. So as you see, this has 2 parts, channel 1 and channel 2. Channel 1 is by convention for the right eye. It basically fixates the machine end of the wire that connects the active electrode from patient's side and the reference electrode, which connects from the reference electrode of the patient's eye from the outer canthus. This is the electrode which we use commonly for a pattern ERG, and this is how it is placed. We can also alternatively use gold foil electrodes, but over here we use the DTL electrodes. This is the pattern for basically the protocol for evaluation of a pattern ERG. So we'll go through it slowly. So in this case, what we do is when we open the software, we click on the patient icon, And when the patient data opens up, we select the patient and then we select the examination to be done. Once we open the patient data and select the examination to be done, this is the interface that opens. Now, what's important in this is the impedance check. So after opening this, the electrodes are placed in this manner as has already been discussed. To reduce the impedance level, we have to use NuPrep gel and the 1020 conductive paste, which reduces the resistance and improves the impedance levels to acceptable values. So when we click on this icon impedance, this box pops up, which shows whether the impedance is in acceptable range. We can see in this image, the active electrodes do not have an acceptable impedance. So we check the position of the electrodes and we apply the conductive paste appropriately and place them again till we get an acceptable response of impedance. After that, we click on the pattern ERG 148-minute icon and we start the examination. The examination takes usually 30 seconds, and then we click on the ERG2 and start the recording again. Once the recording is done, we have to see if the artifact levels is less than 5. If it is less than 5, the recordings are acceptable. Now, when we see for the result, this is how the results are displayed. But the graph has a scale of 50 microvolts per division. So we have to magnify this to reduce the graph scale from this icon on the bottom right. So when we magnify it, it becomes more apparent. Now to the left, the recording is very poor. Why? So when we went back and checked the impedance was not acceptable because impedance can change during the test also. Also, this kind of inappropriate result can also be obtained if the artifact levels are high. So before labeling it an abnormal test, we have to see if the parameters are normal or not. Now, once they are checked, we order for the printout, and the reporting has to have measurement of amplitudes and latency of the P50 and N95, the stimulus parameters, normal values, and representative waveforms. So this is the printout with the normative data and the patient data of various waveforms. To note, P50 amplitude is from N35 trough to P50 peak, and the N95 amplitude is from the P50 peak to the N95 trough. Now, where can we have abnormal P50 amplitudes? In any macular pathology like macular edema, central serous retinopathy, Stargardt's, etc. An abnormal N95 would be there in primary ganglion cell dysfunction, Leber's hereditary optic atrophy, any other genetic optic atrophy, glaucoma, optic neuritis, etc. So pattern ERG is always interpreted in combination with other electrophysiological tests like VEP. Now, if pattern ERG is normal and VEP is normal, you are looking at a non-organic visual loss. If VEP is normal along with a pattern ERG normal, then we are looking at optic nerve dysfunction. If the P50 is normal, but the N95 is abnormal along with an abnormal VEP, then it's clearly an optic nerve dysfunction. If the P50 is abnormal, we look at the ERG. If the ERG is normal, we are looking at a localized pathology of macula. And if the ERG is also abnormal, then we're looking at a generalized retinal dysfunction. Pattern ERG is also detectable in no clear cells, and it also helps to distinguish central macular dysfunction from peripheral macular dysfunction. How? If we increase the recording of the field of the pattern ERG from 15 to 30, and if the P50 attributes improve, then we are sure that this bad attribute of P50 was from the central 15 degree, which got compensated by the more peripheral 15 degrees of the macula. So it helps us distinguish between the central dysfunction and the peripheral macular dysfunction. Other uses for general ophthalmologists will be early glaucoma detection, where the N95 would be affected, any optic nerve stress in ocular hypertension, where N95 would be affected, monitoring the drug toxicity, where macula is affected and P50 will be hampered, monitoring therapeutic success, for example, in a choroiditis, which involves the macula and we are giving the drugs, and in early stages,
Hello? Mr. Raj, let it go. Yeah. We'll finish in time. Don't worry. Hello?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, it says stopped.
It stopped?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
Just a second, I'll check. I'm checking with the AV team. The connection was not there.
Yeah.
The doctor has been disconnected. The presentation hasn't stopped.
So meanwhile, I think we'll request Dr. Nidhi to proceed with her.
Yeah, doctor is back.
Yeah.
Dr. Vibhuti is back.
Please conclude. There is no time.
Yeah. Yes, please, sir. Please conclude.
So yes. So basically, when we monitor the therapeutic success, how do we do that? When the choroiditis is resolving and it's not clinically very evident, we can take help of the pattern ERG to see if the P50 attribute is improving. And if it is improving, we are sure to have a therapeutic success, and we are sure to be seeing a therapeutic, functional improvement in the macular status. That's all from my side, and I invite Dr. Nidhi for her talk on VP and EOG.
Thank you so much, doctor.
Dr. Nidhi, please share your slides. Please unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible now.
A very good evening. I will be talking about electrooculogram and visual evoked potentials. I have no financial interest. So what is electrooculogram? It is the RPE layer and the outer retina, and it is a measure of the contrast standing potential of approximately 6 millivolts that exists between the cornea and the back of the eye. It measures changes in the standing potential in light and dark conditions. The normal light peak requires normal functioning photoreceptors in contact with the normal functioning RPE. So what are the requirements? We require the Ganzfeld dome. Just a second. We require the Ganzfeld dome and 2 LED fixation targets, which are placed 15 degrees left and right of the central light. These are bright during light adaptation, and there is minimum brightness in the dark. We need 30 to 60 minutes of pre-adaptation time in normal room light. Avoid any bright procedures before the test. The pupil should be dilated. In case it is non-dilating, then we have to increase the luminance. Refraction correction is not required. The room should be completely dark, and when the light is on, the luminance should be 100 candela per meter square. So we have electrodes on the inner and outer canthi, and a ground electrode placed on the forehead. The impedance should be less than 5 kilo ohms. The position of the electrodes near the medial canthus is important. They should not touch, and there should be some separation, else there will be a contamination in the recording. Normal should be less than 15%. The patient has to move his eyes to the LED with single sweep with head fixed. The saccades are recorded for 10 to 15 seconds with a 45 to 50 seconds rest. Measure 15 minutes in the dark and then 15 minutes in the light. So this is the interface of the machine. We start the examination, and this is the recording in light and dark phase. Check the impedance of the 4 electrodes. If it's green, then only go ahead. Green means it is less than 5. This is the recording of the saccades in the dark phase. Here you can see that there is an idealized record of the saccades. If there is an upshoot, that means the patient is overshooting the fixation target, and the patient has to be advised to just look at the LED lights. This is the how the test proceeds. We also have an infrared camera here to see the movement of the eye. And then the final result comes in a wave pattern. Here, if there is some doubt with the peak and trough, that can be altered. Also, the wave can be magnified to form a proper wave pattern. The values are given in the peak and trough, and the Arden ratio is calculated by the machine itself. This is how the printout is given to the patient. So the maximum amplitude in light adaptation is known as the light peak, and the minimum amplitude in dark adaptation is known as the dark trough. Its ratio in percentage is known as the Arden's index. And the Arden's ratio, it should be normally more than 1.8, and abnormally low is less than 1.2. Now, there are very few indications like in Best dystrophy, butterfly pattern dystrophy, chloroquine toxicity, and Stargardt's dystrophy. This is an example of a printout in EOG of Best disease in which the Ardens ratio is significantly reduced. The EOG correlates with ERG. An abnormal rod ERG, there will be reduction in EOG light rise also. When there is profound EOG light rise reduction plus good rod function, that means that there is dysfunction of the RP only, which happens in Best disease. Also, this test can be done to test the carriers in cases of children which are uncooperative for the test. And in such cases, the Arden ratio has to be significantly low to establish the diagnosis without any genetic testing. Coming to visually evoked potentials, they are electrical signals generated at the visual cortex in response to visual stimulation. These are occipital responses corresponding to the central visual field, and they assess the intracranial visual pathways and their functional integrity, ranging from the retina to the optic nerves, chiasma, radiation, up to the occipital cortex. The central retina projections are present on the occipital lobe, and the foveal projections are magnified at the cortex. So what we require is, again, electrodes, impedance less than 5 kilo ohms. The active and reference electrode impedance difference should be less than 20%. The placement of the electrodes, we follow the 10-20 rule, in which the head is divided from the nasion to the inion. And then the active electrode is placed 10% of the area above the inion. And the reference electrode is on the forehead, while the ground electrode is on the top of the head. This is how it looks on the machine. Once the electrodes are put, it will show the impedance. And if it is less than 5, then we can go ahead. The VP stimuli can be of flash, pattern, color, or motion. In flash VP, we have the Ganzfeld stimulator, and in pattern VP, we have the CRT monitor. So in pattern VP, the distance from the monitor is 100 centimeter. Refraction should be done. Patient should be light adapted, no dilatation, done monoocularly, and any artifacts like blinking of eyes should be avoided. The lesser the better, it should be less than 5. So the stimuli here is a checkerboard stimuli which has a pattern reversal. There are different checker sizes, and the constant luminance of 40 to 60 candela per meter square should be there with a very high contrast of more than 80%. In the test, averaging numbers lowest at least 64 per test should be done, and these test results should be done at least twice. In cases of infants who have a very low cooperation, the numbers per test can be reduced. So this is how the patient looks at the monitor. We have 1 degree or 60 minutes stimulation checkerboard and the 15-minute. This is the waveform that is seen in the pattern VEP, in which the most important wave is the positive P100. The latency of this wave, or the implicit time, is important, which is from 90 to 110 milliseconds, and its amplitude, which is calculated from the previous negative wave N75 to the peak of this wave, is the amplitude, which should be more than 5 microvolts. This is how the output will look, and the report will be given to the patient. There are multiple criteria for abnormality. We are not going to go into this right now. The indications will be optic neuritis, multiple sclerosis, glaucoma, optic atrophy, hereditary optic neuropathy, toxic neuropathies, or compressive optic neuropathies. Other indications include unexplained visual loss, malingering, pre-surgical evaluation, and measuring the visual acuity in non-responsive subjects. This is the normal wave pattern in both the eyes, where we can see the latency is with the normal limits as well as the amplitude. In cases of traumatic optic neuropathy, you would see that in the left eye, there is some delayed implicit time and the amplitude is significantly reduced. In this case, if you see the right eye, there is a delayed implicit time and a moderately reduced amplitude versus the left eye. This is a case of optic atrophy in which you can see that no signal has been elicited in the left eye and the vision was no clear. Onset and offset pattern VP, we have in this a pattern which is flashed, and then when it is off, there is a equiluminant diffuse background, and this can be used in subjects with nystagmus. The waves here are different. We have C1, C2, C3, in which the negative wave C2 is important and its latency normally is 100 to 120 milliseconds. Flash BP, here the stimulus is a flash with a larger field size, done again monoocularly in a dimly illuminated. And the flash intensity is 1.5 to 3 candela per meter square, and the background intensity here also is low. The patient needs to be light adapted, undilated pupil, the impedance should be less than 5 kilo ohms, and 2 measurements have to be done. This is the test which is happening in both the eyes. And then we have the graph. Here again, we can make some changes in the graph to achieve a proper wave pattern and correct the peaks and troughs of the wave. And this is the printout that is given to the patient. So in flash BP, we have different waves. We have 3 positive and 3 negative waves, in which the second wave, positive P2, is important. Its latency and its amplitude has to be seen. So indications are uncooperative or unconscious patients, in patients with media opacity, with penetrating wounds to the globe, and selection and timing for posterior segment surgeries. Just a look at all the 3 patterns of the waves in all the 3 tests. We also have sweep BP, in which the visual acuity can be calculated. And we have multifocal BP, which is like an objective perimetry, in which 4 electrodes are mounted on a bracket. And then we get the amplitude in waveforms, which can be sectoral or which can be in ring pattern. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bharti, Dr. Vibhuti, and Dr. Nidhi. Thank you very much for finishing our course on time, and the request made by Mr. Raj is met. Thank you, Mr. Raj.
Thank you so much, doctors. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So
I'll request everyone to join the link they have got on their email IDs for the inauguration.
Yeah, sure.
By this, we come to the end of the day for Hall Shields.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.